Before we begin, and drop a comment right now. Where are you watching from? We want to see this community light up from every corner of the globe. Now buckle in. Because what happened at the Strait of Hormuz on March 7th is not a headline. It is a turning point in history. Imagine waking up to learn that the world's most critical oil choke point, a 21-mile-wide corridor carrying nearly 20% of the planet's petroleum, has just been declared a closed military zone by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Imagine tanker captains across the Gulf receiving a chilling radio broadcast at dawn: turn back. The strait belongs to Iran. Now imagine what happened next. 180 minutes. 3 hours. That is all the United States needed to respond, to strike, and to ensure that Iran's naval ambitions were not just stopped, but erased from the water entirely. This is not a war game. This is not a simulation. This is how global power works when a regime miscalculates its moment. Stay with us, because every single minute of those 180 counts. The annihilation did not begin with noise. It began with absolute, suffocating silence. At 4:00 a.m. on March 7th, while IRGC commanders sat in their fortified command rooms reviewing blockade logistics, believing the strait was already theirs, Operation Iron Meridian went live. No press release. No warning shot. No ultimatum. 28 Tomahawk Block V cruise missiles launched from 2 Virginia-class submarines operating silently beneath the Gulf of Oman streaked low across the pre-dawn darkness toward Iranian early warning radar installations along the coast. Within 4 minutes and 30 seconds, those installations were offline permanently. Ask yourself something: what does a modern military become without its eyes? The answer was unfolding in real time. F-35CS operating from the USS Gerald R. Ford Strike Group had already penetrated Iranian airspace using terrain masking flight paths. Their targets, missile battery control nodes outside Shiraz and Bandar Abbas. The S-300 systems Iran had paraded across state television as their impenetrable shield never fired a single round. Not because they lacked ammunition. Because they had no radar feed left to lock onto a target. They were blind, and they didn't even know it yet. At 4:47 a.m., the Steel Falcon underground command complex, buried beneath reinforced concrete deep in the coastal hills north of the strait, received 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators delivered by AB-2 Spirit that no Iranian sensor had ever detected. The complex, built over 7 years and at enormous cost to house the IRGC's Maritime War Command, was designed to survive conventional strikes. It was not designed to survive this. Iron Meridian had done exactly what it was engineered to do: strip away the brain of the Iranian naval machine before a single warship had moved. No eyes. No communications. No command authority. By 5:00 a.m., the most powerful naval force Iran had ever assembled was drifting across the strait, fully armed, fully crewed, and completely leaderless. What no one outside the Pentagon knew, and what Iranian state media will never broadcast, is what intelligence assets confirmed afterward. At the moment of the Steel Falcon strike, General Reza Karimi, the IRGC's newly appointed commander of strait operations, was inside that complex with 19 of his senior officers. They had gathered for a 4:30 a.m. operational briefing, the irony almost too brutal to acknowledge, to finalize the blockade strategy that was supposed to bring America to its knees. The bunker that was meant to protect them became their tomb. This is the fatal flaw at the heart of centralized military doctrine. When you build a system where no captain can engage without approval from the top, and then you eliminate the top, the entire structure collapses in seconds. Iranian warship captains across the strait were now attempting to hail command on frequencies that answered only with static. Some turned their vessels east. Some turned west. Several reportedly killed engines entirely, floating in formation, waiting for an order that would never come. They were chess pieces whose player had just been removed from the board. And the American strike groups? They were already repositioning for the next phase. At 5:45 a.m., black smoke columns began rising from the harbor at Bandar Jask, visible on satellite imagery, visible from passing commercial vessels, visible to the world. For years, Iran had concentrated its fast attack missile boat fleet. Here, sleek, low-profile craft built for swarm tactics, designed to overwhelm a carrier group through sheer numbers and coordinated harassment. Dozens of vessels, freshly armed, crews at readiness. The IRGC called it their asymmetric deterrent. They believed that speed and mass could compensate for the technology gap. At 6:15 a.m., that theory was tested against 42 Tomahawk cruise missiles guided by real-time targeting data from RQ-4 Global Hawks orbiting at the edge of Iranian sensor range. The results were not a battle. They were a reckoning. Missile boats were struck at their moorings before their engines could be brought to operational temperature. Fuel stores ignited in sequential fireballs that turned the harbor into a furnace. Dock infrastructure, cranes, fuel lines, ammunition staging areas ceased to exist. The sailors who had spent years rehearsing how to swarm and overwhelm a carrier group found themselves sprinting down burning piers with nowhere to go. Bandar Jask was no longer a military installation. It was a monument to the gap between doctrine and reality. Were you aware the Strait of Hormuz was this strategically critical? Share your thoughts, we read every comment. Now we come to the moment that will define this day for decades. The IRIS Damavand, Iran's most advanced surface combatant, the pride of its naval modernization program. A vessel Tehran had presented as proof that Iran could stand toe-to-toe with Western naval power, was at the center of the blockade formation when dawn broke over the strait on March 7th. Her captain, receiving no orders from command, made a decision. That cost everything. He maneuvered to engage. At 7:30 a.m., the Aegis combat system aboard USS Lake Champlain, operating as part of the Ford Strike Group's outer defense ring, registered the Damavand's fire control radar attempting to achieve lock. The Damavand was still 38 nautical miles away. The Aegis system flagged it, classified it, tracked it, and waited for authorization that came in under 4 seconds. 2 SM-6 missiles were airborne before the Damavand's crew could complete their targeting sequence. The Iranian crew never saw what killed them. The Damavand, the flagship, the symbol, the proof of concept, broke in two and sank in under 12 minutes. Across the strait, surviving IRGC vessels began broadcasting distress signals on open frequencies. Not tactical communications. Distress signals. The kind of vessel broadcasts when it is asking anyone within range to help its crew survive. The battle, if you can call it that, was over. Here is what Tehran's strategists got catastrophically wrong. Their plan assumed that threatening the strait would fracture American alliances, that Gulf nations would stay neutral, that Asian economies dependent on Hormuz oil would pressure Washington to stand down. Iran believed it was playing a diplomatic masterstroke. Instead, it triggered one of the fastest multilateral responses in modern military history. Within hours of the blockade announcement, U.S. bases in Qatar and Bahrain went to full operational tempo. Saudi Arabia granted unrestricted overflight rights. UAE intelligence assets integrated directly with U.S. naval command networks. Israeli air assets redeployed to southern positions. Even nations that had historically maintained careful neutrality quietly signaled that they would not obstruct operations protecting freedom of navigation. Iran had attempted to isolate the United States. It had isolated itself. The operational map by 8 a.m. on March 7 told a story no Iranian admiral would have wanted to brief. American strike. Assets operating from 6 directions simultaneously, coalition. Logistics chains running at full capacity. And the remaining IRGC naval vessels, those that had survived the opening strikes, surrounded with no viable route to any friendly port. Which part of this response surprised you most? The speed? The coordination? Or Iran's miscalculation? Tell us below, this is your space to speak. Watch Moscow. Watch Beijing. Because their silence on March 7 is more revealing than any statement either capital could have released. Russia and China had both invested enormous diplomatic energy in cultivating Iran as a strategic counterweight to U.S. influence. Both had made noise about comprehensive partnerships and unwavering solidarity. And when the moment arrived to act on those partnerships, when Iran needed them most, they offered exactly nothing of substance. Russia issued a carefully worded statement condemning unilateral military action. Meanwhile, Kremlin analysts were privately running calculations on what $115 per barrel oil meant for Moscow's sanction-strained budget. The answer pleased them. They were not mourning Iran's fleet. They were pricing the windfall. Beijing's foreign ministry produced a longer statement. More eloquent, more pointed, and equally meaningless. China imports over 10% of its crude through Hormuz. A prolonged closure would be an economic catastrophe for Beijing. No Chinese naval vessel moved toward the strait. Not one. What March 7 confirmed is something strategists have known for years but rarely stated so plainly, in geopolitics. Solidarity is a product sold to junior partners by senior ones, and the bill never comes due until the moment that matters most. Iran discovered this truth in the hardest possible way, at the worst possible time, with the world watching. 180 minutes. When the smoke began to clear over the Strait of Hormuz. As the March 7 Sunday climbed into the sky, the question the world had been asking for a decade had been answered. Can Iran close the strait? That answer now rests, permanently, on the ocean floor, alongside the wreckage of a fleet that was built on ideology rather than capability, on propaganda rather than preparedness, on the belief that defiance alone is a substitute for power. It is not. The Strait of Hormuz is open. The tankers are moving. And a regime that wagered its most visible military asset on a single catastrophic miscalculation is now explaining to its own people why the navy it was promised cannot be found on any radar screen in the Gulf. What comes next in Tehran, that is the question that matters now. Not in the strait. In the streets. In the corridors of a government that promised its people invincibility and delivered catastrophe. History does not forget mornings like March 7th. Neither should we. If this kind of deep dive, raw military analysis is why you're here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Drop your country in the comments. Share this with someone who needs to understand what real geopolitical power looks like. We will see you in the next one.